Do it again.
I'm good, thanks. The meeting will start. Did you want to say something?
I just
about-
wanted to, we never started, the selectmen never started by giving you a target date.
Okay,
They were inquiring about your progress the other night and asked that I kind of give you the lay of the land for the budget process, so that if you can, if you want to get something back to them that they can use for next year's budget, in time for them to review it and deliberate on it and actually use it, it would be great if you could have something to them by the
Today?
middle of December,
Oh.
the selectmen.
middle of December.
Yeah. At the pace you're going, I think you're probably going to get there. I don't know how many meetings you have scheduled, but
Would we say 15 December, is that what you're?
14 would be ideal
14
because they have a
December.
meeting that night. So
So
if you could
before
target
that date,
that.
so that they can, so maybe a week before that, so they can review it.
yeah, well, they would probably discuss it when they, in their first meeting after they got it.
Okay.
Okay.
But, even the Friday before then would be fantastic.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be they're not looking for a bound, sexy report, that.
Right.
They want your ideas, so.
Yep.
They don't want sexy?
I can't speak to that.
Bound, sexy. There's a big difference.
Again, I think
Think
you're,
about those two
I think
words.
you're on the wrong path.
We should not be sitting together, we know that. Anyway, okay,
And that was all.
All right.
Thank you for indulging me. Bill, we have a tax rate. We'll have a warrant to you early next week, so you know.
Oh, okay.
and is every Thursday
I
a
heard
problem for you?
rumors.
Or,
No, do what you gotta do.
With the exception of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay, that's what we have posted through the end of November.
no Thanksgiving though, right?
No Thanksgiving.
Okay.
But every other Thursday through November is what we currently have posted.
November Thursdays will be tough for me, but
After Thanksgiving?
after November, yeah, after
I'm
Thanksgiving.
sorry, you said every other Thursday, or is it every Thursday?
Right now, we have every Thursday in November except Thanksgiving
Correct.
posted. So we're good through the month. If we need to do something into December, we need to post something more. Or
Fantastic.
we can cancel something, but right now Dawn has us posted through the end of November with the exception of Thanksgiving.
Perfect.
Super, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Chris.
I'll be in on Monday morning to begin to facilitate the tax bill process.
We'll be here.
Good.
Oh, yay.
Oh, boy, oh, boy. All right,
Rather not.
let's do the minutes. I'll take a motion to review the minutes. If anyone wants to.
Who's doing minutes tonight?
Would you like to, or? Who's doing minutes tonight? Anybody want to do
I
minutes?
kind of started them already, so sure, I'll do
Well, me
them, and then
too, but-
somebody else can do them later.
All right. Thank you, Dee.
You're welcome.
All right, anybody,
Second, motion to review?
yeah. Okay, I'll second.
No, you made the motion, I'll second.
Oh, okay. Good, all right. You guys have copies in front of you, and sorry I pre-marked some of these things, but I guess I'll start. On the sentence that says, "Committee went through each program to see if it fit the formula," I was looking to change that as our concept. I added number 1 to it, but I think it's number 1 and 2 as I look at it. I don't know if you want to formally identify our concepts as with numbers. You confused?
Yeah, it's,
All right.
it's not the charge. It's not the concept, it's the
Concepts, the concepts.
The concepts
charge is what we're
from our
supposed to
minutes
do.
in, what week was the?
Let me read concept number 1. Revenues from the fee-based programs are deposited into the RRF.
I got you. Okay.
Concept number 2, expenses directly related to fee-based programs will come from RRF. So I think when we went through that spreadsheet, we were looking at 1 and 2. Were we also looking at 3? Or, well, first off, do we need to identify each concepts, or do you want to just leave it as our concepts?
I think that helps clarify. When someone says, what concept are you talking about? It clarifies.
I just rephrased this to say, committee went through each program to see if it fit committee's concepts number 1 and number 2 for RecRevolving fund.
Okay, it might also be number 3.
Does it fit number 3 too?
Any expenses that could be seen as a cost associated with the general good or
Okay, for concepts 1,
good
2,
of
and 3.
or usage by the town, not a specified program, shall be taken from the general fund. Not real sure if we did that or not. But
And forgive me, is that something that you kind of formalized last week? Those 3?
no, those were the 3 that we produced.
Okay, sorry. I'm just trying to make sure I fill in the gaps from last week.
Yeah,
These are in the minutes from October 8th.
Okay.
At the bottom are 3 and are 2, and then on the back is number 3. Those are the 3 concepts that we were working off last week.
Perfect.
Okay, so
do we think that is true?
I
Was
put
that
1, 2,
meaningful?
and 3.
Okay. Is that all right?
No, I would agree that is true.
Paper shuffle.
All right. Second one I had was paragraph where the van was discussed, and then a couple of sentences into it, where it says RRC, that should be RRF,
Fantastic.
I believe.
Highlighted.
Don't know what RRC is.
Oh, it's called a typo.
That's okay. A
No,
little bit further down, there's an
wait a minute.
RFF.
Wait a minute, I'm trying to find that. Oh, here it is. I want to make the changes now, so.
Okay, good.
Okay. And the next one?
A little bit further down, sport referees are paid a stipend out of the RRF, that says RFF.
Okay.
At the sentence, it says lifeguards are paid out of the general fund as they are public use employees. I didn't like that phrase, but I didn't know what to change it to, but.
Well, I wasn't
comma.
quite sure how to put that either, so I figured I would put that in that way, and then we could talk to Janet about if she had any ideas of a better use. Because lifeguards are there for all townspeople,
Right.
All residents.
all residents. As they are there for all residents.
Okay,
Are at the beach for all residents. Is that good?
And thus is paid, and that way, and thus it's paid out of the general fund, not the RRF.
Lifeguards are paid, it says swim lessons are provided by paid waterfront employees, and then / RRF.
Okay.
Lifeguards are paid out of the general fund as they are at the beach for all residents.
No capital on lifeguards.
and then all I've added there is comma, consistent with concept number 2, but it should be number 3. With our concept, or however you want to phrase that.
Consistent with committee's concept number 3. Okay?
And then, on the second side here, which you guys don't have, first sentence is, rec director provides to select board the amount of time permanent staff support fee and non-fee programs.
Say that again, isn't that what it says?
That's what it says.
Yep. That's what I have in my notes.
And I think she may do that from program to program. But I'm not sure that,
I don't remember talking about that, so I don't report to him.
yeah,
Or,
But when you do your planning for programs, there are, you know of support staff that are necessary for each, and what their, what that support would be. And I think this is where I asked you specifically what kinds of things you were looking for to, if you will, for the rec director to report those amounts of time that are spent supporting those both fee and non-fee based programs.
right,
But I don't think she reports to the select board to do that. This is a wish that exists.
is that how
to-
you do, were we talking about the budget at that point? Is that how you figure out your budget, what you need for hours for an assistant? I can't remember how I wrote that so specifically
I don't
that way. But we were talking about court, it's like right underneath what I put about Courtney being paid for her camp time as director out of the RecRevolving, even though she was the assistant at the time. And it was like right under that I put that you provided the selectmen and I mean I literally wrote it exactly the way that sentence reads, but I can't remember the context.
Well, last year, based on the budgeting amounts, there were changes that were made in the way in which you pay for, or you paid for certain employees.
Yes. They cut
And-
the budget by $12,000, so
You had to,
yeah, that made me change the two positions, because they had taken it out of one position, and part of the disconnect is that I have to have it make sense for what we're doing. And I have to put down on a timesheet, literally on a timesheet, what hours go to the RecRevolving and what hours go to general. And because they had taken a budget amount, not an actual amount, I had to I had to change how we pay two positions, not just one.
the way it worked out.
Right.
Does that sound like what that is, or?
I think so.
Because that would be a difference between a fee and non-fee.
Right, and I think that's what I was trying to establish, was that you do during the budgeting process, or you did last year during the budgeting process, come up with an idea of what you needed for hours for fee-based programs versus non-fee fee,
Just for one fee-based program. Camp.
just for camp. All right, so how do you want me to change this line? Or do you want me to just delete the line? Because I can do that too.
I think deleting the line, I don't think, I haven't heard anything here that indicates this was good or bad, or.
No,
it's not-
it was simply in my notes.
I don't know what it
and I couldn't
reflects.
remember the context.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go back and review the tape, but I don't think that's really necessary.
I don't think so.
All right, so we're deleting that.
Delete it?
Unless you want me to put in something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then next meeting, Thursday, November 5th at 7:05, T to have Don post, topic for November 5th meeting, Select Board Charge Number 2.
Bill Garnett's name should have two T's in it.
Oh, yeah. You're not a
I
stone.
was,
And I don't know if you got, van was discussed, van was purchased from RRF, and then it should also say RRF. I don't know if you caught that one,
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
purchased from RRF and,
RRF. It says
Pays,
RRF.
oh,
pays for upkeep. I didn't circle, yep, thank you.
See what I'm saying?
So what, do you want me to
It
change?
says RFF, it should say RRF.
Oh, no, I see.
Simple typo.
Yep. Okay.
Anything else?
Do I have the van information correct, Janet?
I think so.
Approximately, because that,
Yeah, I think it's 5, but 4 or 5 is fine.
okay. So everything else is good?
No other comments?
Nope.
All right, take a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
So move.
Seconded.
Wait a second, let me get back to that.
All right,
Wait a minute. So
Bill and Brian.
Skip made the motion to accept.
No, I
Bill
did.
did.
Oh, Bill did.
Brian seconded.
I asked for the motion.
All those in favor?
All those in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Cool. All right. Charge number, anybody have any other comments? Otherwise, we'll go on to charge number 2.
Fantastic.
Nah? All right. All right, charge number 2. Now I had it here, what did I do? Jeez. Charge number 2 says,
Should the selectmen set a target amount needed in the RRF, and if so, how?
all right, and we've had several discussions in regards to that. And I'll start it off with one, because I guess I had a rude awakening. So I'll start it off with $3,000 is where the rec revolving fund should be limited. My belief is a yearly transfer would be made into a capital reserve fund that would exist for, lack of better terminology at this point in time, the Marston property, which apparently is on its way to be the
A future use?
future recreation facility location. Don't know that 3,000 is a good amount.
Where did you get these, where did you get this number?
The number basically came from down below. It was looked at as to a number that was high enough to support the development of new programs, but low enough to not raise flags. Putting the money, the extra money, into something like a capital reserve fund for very specific recreational expenditures seems to be more prudent than what's presently there.
So,
Now, having said that, and having discussed the van last week, it appears to me that we would set up another fund, another capital reserve fund to
mind
support,
reading.
the van. Don't know how legal any of this is. This is just a
Well, I
thing.
just don't understand, why does it need to be a separate fund? Why can't it be the rec revolving fund? Because the warrant article that set up the
Yep.
rec revolving fund was broad and could include any of those projects, both of those projects.
Correct.
As well as it
Could it
wouldn't limit.
necessarily, could it cover the, was it Marston property? If it's not a fee-based, like, cause one of our, things is that it has to be related to a fee-based program to come out of the rec revolving fund. So if that property isn't a fee-generating property, If it's an open use property, then it falls under the general use of the town's residents and can't be pulled from the rec revolving fund.
Well, I don't know, have we decided that all fees must be used for fee-based programs?
That's
Well,
just the concept that we're using at this
Right.
point in time. It isn't anything yet,
That's
but,
the
but
working concept.
but,
I'm
but
hoping to change that.
obviously we need to work that in if that's the deal. Now, it came to my attention, not that I agree with this approach, because I've been very adamant about this, but I started looking at it from the opposite side and saying, okay, if this scenario can happen, then how do we work it in such a manner that we make sure that scenario doesn't happen? The scenario is that the monies can be spent. I'm going to say more easily, I don't know that that's a true statement, from the rec revolving fund than from a capital reserve fund. I was told that this money in the rec revolving fund could disappear at town meeting, as a for instance. I'm not saying this town meeting, but it can disappear at any town meeting.
Disappear in what respect? I mean, the body voting to withdraw the money and put it into the general fund?
No.
Because that can't happen.
Well, it could, if
No, it can't.
It was on a
The-
warrant article and voted on.
If there is a warrant article to abolish the rec revolving fund, everything in there goes into the general fund.
I don't think it would win, but inconceivable.
Okay.
But
That
having-
is the
So-
way the RSA reads, yes.
The
So-
RSA doesn't
RSA
say
says
anything about what happens with the money when it goes over.
If such recreation revolving fund is rescinded by vote of the legislative body, any remaining amounts in the fund shall become part of the general fund accumulated surplus. So if the body, there's 15 people left at town meeting, and they vote at that point to stop, rescind the fund, that money can be put into the general fund, and then the select board can spend it however they feel
Any way they want.
they want. I think it's prudent, especially considering the amount of money that's in there, that we suggest setting up a capital reserve for this money, for any accumulation that is over what we help determine is needed, so that that money can then only be used for rec things. Whatever, the capital reserve fund is set up to do.
But the only assumption there is that a capital fund would be more, it would
Secure.
be more secure against,
Correct.
Well,
but I
Well-
don't know that that's true.
I believe that capital reserve funds can expire after a particular length of time, and I'm not sure exactly how that works. We put money every year into a capital reserve fund for fire trucks. Seems to happen consistently at town meeting. I don't know how long it stays in there until such time as we have to purchase. There's money that goes into a capital reserve fund for highway reconstruction. And I believe that many times that has a 2-year time limit on it. So, if I may think out loud, I think one needs to do some research on time period.
Well, if you look at the two capital reserve fund RSA pieces that we were given, there's no time limit on either one of them. I wouldn't suggest that there's not additional things to look into, but just at brief glance
Okay.
over the two,
All right.
over the two things,
Yeah.
there isn't one. I know like
Maybe there can be.
maybe maybe you can
Yeah, and I-
write it that way, potentially. Don't like the fire truck fund, wasn't that 4 or 5 years? That,
It would tend to be that amount.
oh, there you go, there's the book right there. There's the warrant articles.
I was trying to look up, but there's no service in here.
Yeah, it's,
Oh, do you want I can give you the password,
Oh, yeah, that'd be helpful.
but then I'd have to kill you.
Well, that's
you
just
want
not
to put
worth
it
it.
over on TV?
No. That's what I was just thinking.
Janet
I
can
can,
give it to me.
yeah, Janet can give it to you. I was gonna say, I can come over and write it down for you.
Well, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be added to the fire department vehicle capital reserve fund for the purchase of purchasing fire and rescue vehicles. Okay? Doesn't seem to be any time limit on the warrant article.
Okay.
And you're saying there doesn't seem to be any time limit on that.
And the RSA, no.
Okay. If I may also think aloud for a moment.
Please.
Oh, I missed that. Okay.
There is what, we're $140,000
Thereabouts, yep.
in that. There is a perceived need among many people in town for additional athletic fields. Okay? Those cost money. And if there is a sum of money, $140,000 in the rec revolving fund, it would seem to be logical to at least look at using those funds for the construction of athletic fields. Now, did you say that your budget was cut by $15,000 and you had to make up the difference out of the rec revolving fund?
It's at 12.
12,000, okay. If that becomes a constant, in other words, cutting your budget requests from the general fund, then it would seem to me that the rec revolving fund would slowly decrease. Don't know how fast, don't know at what point, don't know how much athletic fields
Or stay the
cost.
same.
Okay, or stay the same. So if one were to follow Skip's reasoning, then this might protect those funds for a recreational facility purpose as opposed to the day-to-day running of the recreation department. Do I understand this correctly? Is that basically?
I can't tell you that that's what it helps to protect, but certainly from the avenue of a pot of large amount of money to a pot that has very little money, the effect may be the same, yeah.
I think it would.
Well,
It would.
again, one of the major costs is camp. And I don't know this, but if I look at the numbers, the expenses related to camp and the income related to camp are about the same.
Expenses including or discluding the camp director position that Janet paid for out of the rec revolving this year because the funds were cut from the other budget.
I personally believe the camp director should be paid from the RRF Personally.
Which it was
this year.
this year.
And as I've discussed many times, I don't really care what the position the person holds,
Job title?
job title the person holds at a particular moment in time. But the camp director is related to camp.
Right.
I personally believe that time spent planning for camp is general fund. Just like planning for any program. The aftermath of any program, the closure of it, same way. But if you have somebody called a camp director that comes in to directs the camp, that's their focus, then that should be that particular title. And should be paid from the fee-based program, as we are saying with number 1 and number 2.
Quick question for Janet. Does the income from camp that you get cover that director's position? Does that become, is there any income left over after that, or does it become a wash, or does it become a loss at that point? Do you know?
Last year was the first year we took it out, but we also raised the fees and we also cut expenses to try to make sure that we were gonna break even. We did make money, but that would have been adjusted this year if we were going to do the same plan. In other words, I would have spent more in order to get the program somewhat back to what we had. We made some major cuts to make sure that we would break even, because I had absolutely no idea what another $7,000 or $8,000 charge to the camp was going to do. It seemed to me that it would have broke even or lost money, but I wasn't sure. So I cut expenses and raised the fee by $10 for each week. So
Can you break even next year if you have to do the same thing?
most likely.
Depends on the number of,
It all
Well, yeah,
depends on
that's
how many-
that's definitely a variable, no doubt about it. And I was just trying to get to that before you went on,
Yep.
Skip.
I
So,
mean, things like, we decided 2 years ago, Water Country, rained out that day, and we went bowling, and nobody really complained. So when we looked at this year, we made a decision before we even went into the year not to go to Water Country, to cut back and do bowling this year, because it's,
Cheaper.
$500 versus $2,000.
Yeah, my kids complained.
Yeah, so, you know,
talk to them about that, Andy.
there was a real emphasis on trying to make sure that we cut expenses this past year, because I didn't know where an additional $7,000 of charges was going to bring us. We have made, in the past, we have made $7,000 or $8,000 in the course of a year on camp, but in past years, we've made $7,000 or $8,000 like for the whole revolving fund, camp and soccer and all the other programs combined. So with so many things changing last year, I just cut back expenses to make sure that it was going to be.
How did you ever come up with $3,000? You just pull that out of, you're an engineer, you did not pull it out of the air.
No, I did pull it out of the air,
Okay.
because I didn't know where to begin, and so I first looked at, I was struggling with the van, and so I looked at an amount of $30,000. But that didn't really work very well, because if it went to buy the van, you'd spend all your money, and that would be it. The van does not fit into our concepts very well, by the way, but that's okay. I was still trying to figure out the van itself. The van supports other than rec department activities, supports a lot of town activities. So to me, it seems like that should come from the general fund and be identified that way. Not real sure that's gonna fly, I don't know how that works, but assuming we keep those types of things the same. I then looked at creating the capital reserve fund for the van, which monies could go into. I'm looking at and I don't know how this would work, because I don't truly know the income of the revolving, the recreation department from that standpoint, and where that would be. But if we were to put 2 to 3K in there per year, over the 5 to 10 years, you'd have a pretty good chunk of money in there. So I was looking at capping at that. Well, what happens if you don't get that amount?
You could start it as, you could word it as such like, the first $2,000 over the
Correct.
limit of 3,000 is designated to go to the van capital reserve
Reserve
fund.
fund, and the rest,
All monies above that will go to the whatever else, whatever you want to call it, the
Right.
other fund.
right. And so those are the kind of things I was looking at and going, all right, well, as long as we have the 2 reserve funds, the capability of perhaps funding each one of those could exist.
So the 1 year, 2004 or 2005, we lost $8,000 in the revolving fund.
So then there wouldn't be any money that year to move.
Right.
Wouldn't be money to move, and it would be starting off the next year with a reduced amount.
What was the reasoning for that?
No one knows.
There was no reasoning, there just wasn't enough money.
You
Well,
left.
I left in 2004. And when I came back in 2005, I got the numbers and I reviewed it and I couldn't really see what the reason was.
So that's an anomaly. That's the exception.
Most likely, but I mean, if you have to hire a camp director at, $15 an hour, that's going to up your expenses. So, it depends on,
it kind of has to do with how you approach the programs and the people that are available to support the programs and so forth and so on. And how much support you get and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot to it.
That leads me, I guess that your original number of 3,000, to me, I was originally a little surprised at how low you went.
Me too.
It was used as a shock factor. That was basically it. I'm open to anything, but I used it more as a shock factor than it did anything else.
And I'm not opposed to any of the ideas of cutting back and creating a cap and designating money from that to go to other rec funds, but I would argue that, the 3,000 is too low.
Got a new number?
I would.
I just started someplace. That's
I'll
all
throw
it was.
another thing. Why not? Why does there have to be a limit? I mean, why should?
Because they've asked us for one.
They've asked if we should have one.
Oh,
Right.
true, true.
My argument
That was my
is
original thought, was do we
give
need
Janet
one?
more flexibility and whoever's running the rec department more flexibility to decide, okay, we want to spend this on the Marston property. The only part I agree with is I like the idea of something more secure so that the general citizens couldn't take it all and say, great, all these fees became a tax that we collected.
Oh,
So I like the idea of a more secure that's only to fund rec programs. But my fear is that if we take it all out, then Janet, say they want to build, I don't know, a camp for 40,000, and they want to save up for it to use for summer camp. If we say that, okay, you can only, all this money has to go to the van and this has to go to the Marston property, they have no flexibility to change.
Well, I think that the way I understand the capital reserve funds is that you can, like we do with the fire department or the police department, it's fire department vehicles. It's not specifically said Marsden property, it's rec facilities and programs. So then, because you're not being specific of where it's going, you could do one thing, or you could
That would be
do,
fine.
you could do another. So there is flexibility in the capital
Yes.
reserve fund.
That's a little bit down the road.
Well, no, I totally agree with you, but what I'm saying is that you don't have to be so narrow with the capital reserve fund to say that this money is only being put aside to be used to develop something at the Marsden property. It can be broader than that, so if something else comes up or something changes, you have the ability to write it that way. I like the
Concept.
the concept, what you just said, of having it preserved from something happening to it.
Encroachment, whatever you want to call it.
I'm
and
trying to be really careful with my words.
I'll use encroachment.
But I want
I don't
it
care.
flexible enough that I don't want it to say it can only be used at the Marsden property.
Right.
Because I think there are other things that we can use the Marsden property for. I don't think that it's our only focus and option should be, this money is for the Marsden property.
And in support of that, you open another little door that's kind of been of concern to me. If this money is set aside for the Marsden property from RecRevolving, that strongly implies that at least a portion of the Marsden Fund is going to be under the umbrella of the Recreation Department, as opposed to any other group in town, because of how RecRevolving funds are used. I don't know if that changes once you move it into a, once you move it into a capital reserve fund, but there's, it seems to me that at some point, somebody has got to buy into establishing that umbrella and basically go forward with saying, this is recreation property. And it's not at the present, well, you're on that committee.
I am on that committee,
Which committee is that?
the Marston Property Exploration Committee.
Okay.
And we made recommendations many moons ago in regards to recommending to the selectmen that this property be used for recreational facilities and opportunities. I have not,
Exclusively?
the word exclusively was never used. The implication was yes, if you will. Having said that, there's discussions of, walking trails, which is recreation, but, community gardens. There's been a lot of things that have been discussed there. Gun
Well, and-
ranges, a number of different things,
Solar,
but,
a solar array.
Solar farm?
yep.
A solar array, which
Yeah.
is, it would seem to me that if you take RecRevolving funds, move them a step into a capital reserve fund, and then that money comes out for a solar array, that is so far from the purpose of
RecRevolving.
a RecRevolving that, that's why I'm saying that there needs to be some sort of official designation that certain aspects, certain areas down there are under the umbrella of the Recreation Department.
Right.
I mean, I would say if
I'm a
you,
little hesitant having a conversation about the Marsden property in this context at all. We're talking about what should these funds be used for, and as far as, why do we have a revolving fund? Whether we have the Marsden property or not shouldn't come into this conversation. Whether we want to put, should the revolving fund be used there? Does that now make it a rec department property? I think is kind of putting the horse
well,
before the cart.
it is, but I'd like to avoid that problem going down the line, and
Right.
And also, you are absolutely right, I think, in terms of what you're saying. However, the history that has brought us to this point is there have been a number of discussions in the past between Janet, town administrators, I don't know if it's Chris, but certainly Charlie, and the understanding, if you will, the sense was that this amount of money that's in the rec revolving fund should be preserved to be used for any future development, if you will, down on the Marston's property. So the Marston property is tied up in this,
Including the Marston property.
including the Marston property, but
Not
it's
solely,
It's, you know,
So I think,
and
I
it may
use
be
that kind of
broken.
as an
I mean,
example.
And I would use the word could be used for the
Right.
yeah,
I
but that's the
think-
context that
I
it's
think
been.
that we should get away from using Marston property as our
Yep, I agree.
term.
I agree.
And it should be used for recreation facilities.
Yep.
Could be used for recreation
Yep.
facilities, whether that is there or somewhere
Beach.
else.
Correct. Correct.
Bathhouse at
Or
the beach.
if it's doing something here,
Right.
you know.
I fear pigeonholing us into the
Yep.
Marston.
And that's
That's fine.
Dee's
That's
point,
fine.
and very, very well taken.
Yes.
Um,
Oh,
Does it
Andy-
say in
Andy-
there-
Andy's got a,
There is another point
Fire
that
truck.
I think
Fire
hasn't been raised, is that some, for those who paid into the fee-based programs, there's an argument to be made that those funds should be used for those fee-based programs, not some other program. An
Yes.
example would be, okay, you play soccer, you use the soccer fields, but then that money is gonna be used to improve a baseball field. Is that fair to the players that paid fees to play soccer, that now the extra money is used for something they don't play?
well, I guess if you're gonna look at fields, fields typically are multi-purpose fields,
Yeah.
are they not? So if
Well,
we,
except for baseball. I mean, that's true when you have like flag football and soccer.
I think
So
it,
you-
it
so you
becomes a
can't-
fee base. Is the baseball fee
Or
based?
the example
or
is,
is it general
okay,
use?
Summer
Like-
camp. Fees from summer camp are used to build a soccer field, which not all the summer campers play soccer. So why is their fee being used to build a
Well-
soccer? And that's an argument that's made.
And that is an important consideration. If you go back to the statute, there's not that delineation. And so you're talking basically
Yeah,
about a
yeah.
public relations,
And the idea of
Issue,
a
if you will.
fee is that you're paying for what you use.
I would say as long as if
And I
someone
don't-
is using
I
it and
think the
paying
ma-
a fee and it's going towards a fee-based program, then that's the point of it.
And I think the majority of fee payers are fine saying, okay, as long as the surplus is being used for a rec, they're fine with it.
Yeah.
But there are some that say, okay, if I'm paying for summer camp, I don't want to subsidize something my kid doesn't play just because I have to in order to do summer.
see, I look at
Then
it
it becomes more of a
a
tax.
difference, yeah.
well, it's not a tax. And that's a word that we need to be very careful of. Because it's kind of a red herring, and I know that Chris used it last week. And I'm kind of going to be a stickler on this, given my position. The only taxing authority that exists in the state of New Hampshire is the state of New Hampshire. The town of Nottingham has no authority to levy taxes, which is why, as he said to me, we set a tax rate today. That was done by the state, and they authorized us to tax at a particular rate for the 2015 tax year. It is a fee that goes into a fund that might be used in a variety of recreational areas, and I can understand where, if, I don't know how many kids only play soccer and don't play baseball.
Or don't go to camp.
Or don't go to camp. I don't know how that breaks down, but at some particular point, those lines are going to get real blurry, and,
That's why I say if someone pays in for a fee-based program, so long as any extra overages are being used for fee-based programs, not general fund programs, then it fits
When you say
within
general fund, you mean general rec or?
general use. So like,
Non-fee-based programs?
So the rec fund shouldn't be used for the construction of athletic fields?
the rec revolving fund?
Yeah.
No,
Unless it's part of that fee-based program.
like
I mean, that's not a good
specific.
example, but okay, let's say fee-based programs pay for trails that none of those fee-based programs use.
Right, great example.
And then it's not, I agree, it's not a tax under the definition of
Yeah,
tax.
yeah,
It
and
becomes
I
a
understand
de
where you're
facto
coming
tax.
from in terms of
Yeah.
that, but, which brings another point to mind. How many of, what's the usage of these fields by the school? You know, how, I know Chris said he didn't want to go
Yeah,
there.
let's not get into the whole school situation
Well,
conversation.
Well, I think that goes
But
to
this
our,
becomes a big thing, because if it
Yeah.
goes into if it goes into capital reserve fund for recreational facilities for the recreation department, school's gonna look at it and go, there we go, there's our money. We don't have to do shit with school.
And the,
And I don't,
I have heard,
Which is why the soccer field ended up being a parking lot at
yeah,
the school.
I have.
Because they built the fields behind and they didn't need to maintain that anymore, and so it became a parking lot. And it was always the field that the kids played soccer on.
I was told that it wasn't because there's ledge rock there that makes it
yeah, they didn't
a
fill it enough.
danger. Yeah.
Well, my child went to school year there from 5th grade to 8th grade and played on it every year, and
Yeah, but that
You know.
doesn't make it.
It's not the perfect field.
You gotta
it's not the perfect field, but it's certainly, I've been to a lot worse fields. So, but it's not a field anymore, it's a parking lot.
There
I think
is a
that going-
sense that the school is not actively involved in pursuing the construction of athletics fields for school use,
Or the maintenance of.
or the maintenance of them. And I don't want to say that that's an accurate perception, but that is a perception that exists. And so, to what extent, I guess to expand Andy's point here, does the rec revolving fund put $50,000 into the building of a soccer field that the school uses, that 20% of the use of is the school? And I'm just pulling that number out of my head because I have no idea.
well, wouldn't, in that instance, wouldn't that contradict our working theory number 3, where any cost associated with a general good usage by the town would not be paid out of the rec revolving fund and thus paid out of the general fund? So, I think specifically came up with the idea of like all the fields. So the fields are used for multiple different sports
Yeah.
at multiple different times. They're used by the school. They're used by townsfolk. So it's a general use of town's residents.
And
It's not a specific, like, we bought soccer balls for the soccer.
Right.
We bought volleyball nets for volleyball. Like, those are very specific for fee-based programs, where fields are not specifically for fee-based programs
But
unless
they're-
you put a gate around it and put a lock on it.
But they're used primarily for and by children in the town, not by the general community. So people my age and my mother-in-law's age, we would have absolutely zero use for these fields, but we would be taxed to be able to pay for them because we live in town so that the children can use them. And, so when you look at the demographic of the families with children versus the families without children that wouldn't be using them, and all of a sudden you don't have the general community that's going to be using them. You have a category or a group of the community that's going to be using them, and the other group has absolutely no use using them, but then we still have to pay for them.
But you could use them.
But doesn't,
But you're,
But you couldn't go
You
into
use
a
them
f-
at de minimis amount.
you
Well,
you
what-
couldn't go
So
into a
maybe you
fee-based
go
program
once
and just
to
use
see
the
your
program.
grandchildren.
but
without
what would we
paying the
use
fee.
them for?
Cross-country skiing in the winter.
Kite flying. I
Or
couldn't
if
give
they
you a
had a
specific,
Nottingham
but
Day there. You can use them
So
as part of the general.
what you're saying is, if there is a need to build an athletic field, an additional athletic field, okay? That money has to come from somewhere,
Yes.
okay? And if I understand you correctly, you're saying if it doesn't come out of a fund, capital reserve fund, revolving fund, then that construction cost is going to be borne by all of the taxpayers, probably a majority of whom won't use it.
Correct.
And does it not make more sense to, since there is a pool of money there that may or may not be sufficient to build an athletic field, might make more sense to spare the taxpayers that tax, because this is a tax now,
Right.
and utilize that particular sum of money to build an athletic field.
For the people who will be the primary users of that, that property,
Yeah, yeah.
that space. So, yes, that's essentially what I'm saying,
So we
yes.
have a number of different,
Where's
Yeah.
the maintenance of the beach paid out of?
I don't know.
Is it out of the
Yeah,
rec?
it should be general fund, but
So I guess my argument is that the
What?
beach is paid out of general fund.
What maintenance is done to the beach?
Just hypothetically, if there's maintenance required at the beach, if they want to do something.
trash
Picking up the
pickup.
trash.
Right, the lifeguards are paid out of the general fund because they're for the general use of the population.
So wouldn't
Trash
it,
is picked up by the highway department.
General fund,
General fund.
General fund.
policed by the police department,
So-
general fund.
I guess the way I see it is that, to me, the beach and the ball and the fields are no different. Anybody can go use those.
But we don't have to build the beach. We don't have to create a whole new
Size variance or not,
space
it's
or
the
whatever.
same principle.
The beach is the beach. The beach is there.
It can be the same principle, but if you were to build a recreational building on Marston property in the.
Or any
con-
property.
I know, but I'm just, as an example.
Like if you were to
Marston
build just
property.
like a gazebo for people to use if they want to go
No,
down.
I'm talking basketball courts, squash courts,
Concert hall?
Yeah.
no? Recreation here.
Recreation.
No.
Indoor
recreation.
soccer, all that kind of stuff. At one
Showers, locker
facility,
rooms, the whole 9 yards.
that would tend to be a recreational facility.
Yeah.
And there would be many in the present administration who would say that the electricity associated with that would be paid for out of the rec department, the heating would be paid for out of the rec department, blah, 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 all the way down the line.
Correct.
And to me, that kind of makes some sense if that's what that property is going to be utilized for in the town of Nottingham.
And there will be fee-based programs, soccer, basketball,
Yes, using
Yes.
those.
blah, 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 using that facility,
And I
that
think-
those funds would then be used to offset the cost of said facility.
Correct.
And I
Yes.
think that's
That
fine,
follows.
and that
Yes.
works.
Yes.
We don't have that yet.
Right.
So,
And I can't imagine that the fees that you could raise could come anywhere close to paying for all.
in that too.
That's why I said offset, not pay for, because obviously it's going to be bigger, and as a municipal building, there's gonna be general fund costs that are
I'm
associated
just
with that
saying.
if we ever do something. Jan's going, oh
That
my
could be
God,
the
what are
way-
you doing to me?
That could be the way that things work.
Look at the camera while you do that.
Now, we're about ready to adjourn, but nobody else said anything. Did anybody else bring anything for this? Topic
We've
number 2?
pretty much
I-
talked about what I had already been thinking about.
I have one question.
Yes.
What is the mechanism to take money out of the capital reserve fund? Isn't that just at town meeting?
Yes. So that would,
We have to
that would be
vote.
the one time a year. Wouldn't be as flexible. And therefore, it's a double-edged sword. It's not as flexible, but it would be putting the expenditure of the funds before the people in a more appropriate scenario than perhaps presently exists. where it just now goes before the selectmen, and selectmen make a choice to do something. Oops, sorry. And that's why the $3,000 was used kind of as a shock figure to bring it low, to just say, you know, maybe it shouldn't be that low. Maybe we should have some cushion in there that allows the capability for larger amounts of sums to be spent on a more frequent basis than at a particular moment in time that might not coincide with town meeting.
I would like to make the recommendation, because we're just throwing numbers out here, that the rec revolving fund not fall below $20,000. And that would allow for situations like this year when Janet had to come up with an extra $12,000 in order to pay the director. So if something came up like this again, you wouldn't suck the fund completely dry, so that she couldn't start and do and run other programs. So I think working with a number somewhere, you know, between 15 and 20,000 would be a more realistic number.
I would recommend doing it on a percentage of annual operating budget for the fund, so that it can grow as the community grows. So you're saying 20,000, so what, the annual budget is 40,000, so 50% of the annual budget should be the target?
Why are you saying 40,000 is the annual budget?
That's roughly about what it was, I think, when I looked at the numbers.
Oh, okay.
They right around 40,000 a year in expenses and revenue.
How much we bring into the revolving fund, how much we spend out of the general
How
fund?
much you spend out of the revolving fund a year?
I think it's closer to $70,000 and $80,000 that we bring in and spend out on a given year.
70,000?
Like we would bring in 80,000.
Parks and Recreation,
70,000.
okay, and I don't know if that's the entire thing.
was just looking at that.
The Budget Committee's recommendation for the ensuing fiscal year is $78,691. So, 80, for the sake of argument, $80,000.
That's the
General
general
fund.
fund.
That's general fund.
That's the
Okay.
John,
Yeah.
I'm talking
So
about the
he's,
revolving.
He's talking
yeah,
about
he's
the
talking revolving
Oh,
fund.
I'm sorry.
The amount that floats in and out of the revolving, so you're saying it's,
I think we bring in closer to $70,000 or $80,000.
Yeah,
and
78,000.
spend out Closer to $70,000 or $80,000.
Last year was 78,000 you brought in, and you expended 63.
Okay.
In the rec revolving.
Sorry, I was.
This is rec revolving fund. No, that's,
So
But
I'm
the
sorry,
idea
what's
is-
the difference?
yeah.
So you changed
What was the
percentage.
difference?
15,000?
Ish.
Is that 2015?
14. Is what?
Okay, because
So the
my
20,000
original concern was
is
is
percentage.
if you have 20,000 in there and she spends 12 of it, how long does it take it to get back to 20,000? If you're having an average overage of 10 to 15,000, then that can replenish rather quickly. If not, if that's going to take, hypothetically, say it's going to take 5 years to replenish that 12,000, you know, well, we didn't want it to go below 20, so where does the money come from to replenish that? But it sounds like it could fairly easily replenish itself. Exactly.
It did one year.
so if you, so do you need 70,000 in the fund in order to run everything?
No. The money is spent in and out of the in and out of the general fund all year long until it comes down to one number at the end of the year that we have expended and one number that we have brought in. And then the money goes either from the revolving fund to the general fund or from the general fund to the revolving fund. There's one transfer a year.
Okay,
After the audit, I believe,
okay.
which.
So what number, what
So,
are you?
so assuming things are running generally the same as they did last year, 2014, the 15 grand difference here, 12 of which is going to be added into the expenditure here? As a for instance,
General fund.
From-
It's going to be,
it was taken out of the general fund and put in here as an expenditure,
Right, so this should only be like a $3,000 surplus-ish
ish,
because of the 12,000.
assuming everything's the same.
Assuming we're
Yeah,
apples to apples.
But I mean, you know,
I know,
okay.
it's just what it is. So, one of the reasons for saying 3,000, for me, was to take the large amount that's in there now and get it into a capital reserve fund as soon as possible. I'm not saying it has to be 3,000, but after that point in time, perhaps, so it's a two-parter, how do we want to do the van? Anybody have any thoughts on the van? Do we still want to,
I'm torn, actually.
all right, let's not discuss the van then.
No, I'm just
Make a
gonna,
note,
I'm
you're
just gonna
torn.
reiterate what you said earlier, that
I understand, but
because part is used for general town stuff and part is used for camp, maybe the van should be just a general fund, capital reserve fund, not related to rec revolving. Because it does more than just rec. It does other town things as well.
I hear you.
So,
That would fit into our concepts
think-
nicely.
If it's 50% used by camp, then camp should probably, funds from camp should go towards it. I don't agree that it's being paid all by camp.
it's used for 10 weeks out of camp and 40 weeks the rest of the year. 42.
42.
The rest of the year.
7 weeks of camp.
7 weeks of camp and, so,
Yeah, so you're right. If it's used that minimal and used that broadly by other programs.
and I
then-
was not thinking that initially. I was really thinking it the other way around and I kind of said, wait a second, maybe we need to be looking at the van from a different perspective because it's used a lot more of the year.
so, 7 out of 50 is about 52 is about 1/8, 1/7. So 14% of the use of the van is for camp, and 86% is general? Or does it not get used all that much when camp's not in session? And I'm just, there's a variety of different ways of looking at
Time
this.
with mileage.
But
If
now,
I had to guess, and it's a shared
Just
guess,
give us a,
my guess is that it's used about 50% for camp in the
Okay.
7 weeks, and then 50% for.
in terms of the annual usage of it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I use it for going to Walmart, I use it for going to.
Walmart
pick up-
for just personal shopping?
Yeah. that's what I
Big
do.
van.
Please expand on that.
For fee-based programs or for
Town functions,
town functions.
supplies, and, yeah,
Yes.
I understand.
I also use it for all the meetings that I go to in Concord, and I am on several committees, Land Water Conservation Fund and Open Space and New Hampshire Children in Nature, and Ready Rides is in Northwood. I would use it if I go to any other recreation facility for any meeting. We also take it to the Northern New England Conference, which is up in Attitash, and that's the longest trip usually that we do. So if I had to guess, I would say all those trips combined, because we only use it here on Tuesdays and Thursdays to go back and forth from the beach, which is 1.5 miles. So, I mean,
Okay.
my guess,
Did you use it to go bowling?
no, we took a bus.
Okay.
So, should we,
I think we should come back to this next week.
all right, but let me take a punch at this first. In regards to number 2, can we agree that perhaps there should be a target amount?
Yes.
We don't know how much yet. I'm with you, but I did not like what I heard. So, not from you guys, but outside of here. And does the idea of the capital reserve funds make some sense? Don't know the methods, don't know the legality, don't know, but does it make some sense?
I like the idea that, yeah, if it will provide more protection to the money, yes. We need to know more about the process of
All right.
how long that money can stay there.
So further discussion next week on that?
I would say, as far as the capital reserve fund, I think it's worthy of exploration.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what we mean by a target amount.
Should there be a cap on how much money is in the rec revolving
I
fund?
wouldn't
Talking
call it cap,
about a-
target.
It says target amount. I'm assuming that is some sort of a cap associated with something that you might normally think of as a revolving fund.
And I guess where I'm having a little bit of difficulty understanding it, would that be a required target? So that if the fund
Exceeds it.
fell to 10,000 and the cap was 20,000, then it would necessitate building that back up to 20,000 the next year.
And what happens when it goes to 30,000? Where does
Well,
that
if it's a
10,000
cap,
The excess would go to the capital reserve fund,
automatically?
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
hypothetically, yes. But I would,
It
I
could
would,
also
It
go
goes
to the-
below, it goes below.
I'm hesitant to say like, the target number is 20,000, and it should always be 20,000.
that would be
I-
a required
end of a
amount.
year?
A
Yeah,
required
like, I'm
balance.
hesitant to say that because, okay, well, maybe we got stuck at 16,500. Where's the other money come from? We couldn't get there, so now does the general fund need to pay into that?
Yeah,
No.
and that's kind of where
That's
I'm
like,
getting
you
at.
know, it should be worded, I believe it should be worded in a way that says not to exceed. So it can have 3,000 in it can have 18,000 in it, but it shouldn't exceed 20,000. And at
And
the point
we-
in which it does exceed 20,000, those funds should be transferred to the capital reserve fund, for the rec department, or however we want to
And
word
these
it.
are recommendations to the
Yes.
board,
Absolutely,
not,
yeah.
yeah,
We're in conceptuals at the moment.
yes.
So you're,
We might not have those final numbers until after town meeting. It happens when we get the audit done.
yeah.
We didn't have what numbers? Yeah, as far as at what point in time, you mean? I'm just saying that happen annually. I'm not saying at town meeting, I'm not saying at the end of the fiscal year or anything else, just,
Can money go into a capital reserve fund at any time of the year?
It can go in, but it needs to be authorized to go in at town meeting. I
need to
believe.
create the fund first.
Yeah.
And do funds going in have to be voted on by the town?
Yes.
It can't just be put in by
I
anybody, can it?
believe you're correct in terms of that.
So
But
doesn't that
could you
limit it?
vote in March that whatever the sum is, and then whenever that, we figure out what the sum
And-
is, it can go in. So
and
it
Yeah,
can
we've
be
had,
voted
we've had
on.
warrant articles like that before.
And also in March, you got a pretty good idea as to what it's gonna look like, probably.
Okay.
It hasn't been validated by the auditors.
We usually do a general idea.
So
Yeah.
here's a question. So hypothetically, in March, we say we'd like to create a capital reserve fund for X amount of dollars, and
Well,
the town doesn't vote for it. There needs to be a mechanism. We need to make sure that we keep an eye on a mechanism that if the town doesn't vote for it, it stays in the rec revolving fund.
There's
Like-
only one way it can come out of the rec revolving fund. Two ways. One is on order of the recreation director and approval of the selectmen, and the second way is by rescinding and abolishing the fund, and then it goes to the general fund.
So the mechanism, the way this would work, is first create the capital reserve fund. There wouldn't be any monies, just a capital reserve fund.
Yeah.
For the purposes of Recreation Department recreational facilities. Okay?
Yeah.
And then the next year, putting funds into that.
Here's an example of one that we currently have that we vote on every year. To see if the town will limit the amount held in the cable franchise fund previously established to a maximum of $30,000 at any time and direct all funds in excess of that amount to the general fund.
But I don't understand why you couldn't just create the reserve fund by having the rec department submit it to the selectmen and the selectmen approve it.
Because it needs to be by a vote of the legislative body, I believe,
And
by
that's
state
town
law.
meeting.
And that is
Why?
That because that's
That's
the
the
law.
law.
No, but this is an expense on a rec program.
No. To create a capital reserve fund, you have to vote on creating that fund.
But you could, I mean, you could conceivably say, we're gonna put it into the Marston property. And
Without a capital-
From the
submit
rec
it
revolving fund, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, that's a true
And
statement.
say, and
Yeah.
the selectmen could
The
vote on
the
it.
capability exists for that,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
Without
and-
it going to town meeting.
correct.
yes.
And I don't think you want to do that.
No, I think that would be a really, really bad idea.
Why is that? That's,
Because you're gonna get hammered on by people in town for doing that.
Could you went out there, say so, and spent $140,000?
yeah, but this was rec fees, not.
I hear you, it's just not,
It's not, it's the perception of the
I don't like the
town.
soccer people thinking they're paying for all the other programs.
And
It's the same deal. There are ways in which you do it, which allows the peoples to
voice
have
their
their say.
opinion. Yes.
I don't know if I like it,
No,
but it provides the opportunity. Now, there are some things that do happen, like the 10-year plan, rec department, master plan, no, recreation plan was developed using our rec revolving funds. That didn't go to town meeting, but it was small potatoes. You didn't create a facility that would, going forward, could have large costs associated with it that you then have to pay for that nobody wanted to begin with.
yeah, but I mean, there's certain aspects, for example, to the development plan, that carries with it no liabilities.
What?
Like the Marston development plan, paying for that wouldn't carry any liabilities to it, the town.
Not to the extent of producing a building or producing the actual stuff on the fields.
Yeah.
The development plan is primarily created so that we can go to town meeting
Yeah.
with a plan to request funds to be expended for that purpose. So, yeah, there's some liability associated with it as we go. but I
That's
mean,
gonna be a huge discussion at town meeting,
Well,
but that's where it's appropriate to have it.
that's what we have town meeting for,
That's exactly right.
so. But that's the reason why that typically works that way, and that's,
No, I understand that. I'm just wondering, do you want to do that?
yeah,
I don't think that's been decided yet.
well, no, it hasn't been decided, but,
And I'm also not sure that it's our decision,
No.
you know?
but hearing what I heard, I'm not. I think we have to find a way to nail down where these funds go and not keep them in the rec revolving fund. But that also means keeping that amount at a certain number that allows you the capability to do those things that are required to do for those purposes. And 3,000 is low.
Yes.
I threw it out.
Certainly got some discussion, though.
Well, and that was the point. So,
So plan for next week, are we gonna continue this discussion?
I'd like to.
all right.
Okay?
Who wants to be my sub-chair Vice Chair. I won't be here next week.
Oh, that's right.
I can take notes, or minutes.
You gonna do minutes next week?
2 minutes, that's it.
That way you don't have to be chair?
I can run the meeting if you
You
like.
wanna do that? All right,
I can do that.
thank you, Dee. All right, take a motion to,
So moved.
there you go.
Aye.
All right, all those in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Thank you very much.